Alright guys, welcome back to VALORANT News. A big update last night on what might be going on with this Evil Geniuses roster going into the upcoming season. Following the Game Changers World Championship result, a big theory was that potentially Fluorescent was in consideration for that team. But over the last 24 hours, the situation may have changed somewhat with Icy, former Evil Geniuses reserve effectively, and also on G2 for a recent time, the most recent season, could be potentially the new man that Evil Geniuses want. Are there other options still on the table? Is this Fluorescent thing not going to go anywhere, especially with the tier 2 opportunities potentially off the cards? Very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I'd greatly appreciate it. First of all, just quickly on Redux here because, well, we know the rosters that potentially he's going to be on for the upcoming season. There's been rumours about that roster, of course, with Scuba over there. Then Mitch potentially on the roster in addition to Crashies and Victor is one of the current theories. But yeah, these were some very nice shots here from Redux, and as we say, that's a potential roster. We did wonder for some time exactly what team Redux was going to go to. They're calling that team the Qubit Academy, right? Which is very interesting because that implies some sort of Sentinels relationship there. This is going to be the Turtle Troop team with, Ada, B-Dog, Weeded, and some other familiar names. So, no Redux appearing over there. We also do have some interesting update really on the Loud side. We saw them confirm their roster the other day to somewhat controversial reception really, with Pancada and friends effectively being thrown around as potentially what we are going to be seeing for the upcoming season. I mean, at least that's how Loud described it themselves, basically. It's not quite the team that they could have previously had. However, Vinny is going to be the new in-game leader. We know that Sadak is gone over to KC. We know that Les is gone over to Vitality. And Vinny says that, well, the technical committee, basically the coaching staff, there's more to come, some more new information from the coaching staff on things they might potentially look to change or some developments in that team structure, which are pretty interesting. They also have a sixth man as well, Lux, who apparently is going to be the man rounding out Loud. So, yeah, interesting development over the last few days. Young player, 17-year-old player, contract apparently not yet signed, but this is what's pretty interesting about Valorant at the moment is that you get guys like Redux, 17 years old, you get guys like Luxo, 17 years old, joining these rosters on their bench effectively, and then they can play when they're 18, but of course it also puts the pressure on. I think that's the reason why I always like these ideas, is that, okay, you spend a bit more money signing a decent substitute player, but it's not like those players necessarily would be getting big money elsewhere anyway. And then they help put a bit of pressure on your starting lineup, right? I think that this is the case with Sentinels, that Zelsis will have to be, whatever he says publicly, he'll have to be looking over his shoulder a little bit, because even Sentinels have hinted this themselves, that Redux is a man for the future. And would I be surprised if Redux gets a spot at a VCT team such as Sentinels over the next couple of seasons? Not at all. I think he's very good. I think he will be a VCT player, and Sentinels have him on their bench with the potential to maybe put him into their starting team at some point in the future. Of course, Verno and Bonkar, they've gone over to NRG, and so far they've looked particularly good. So with the strength in depth that we know is existing in the Oxygen Esports situation, Redux and obviously Scuba as well, they are also potentially names for the future, and Sentinels know that. They're potentially considering that, and it means that there is pressure on the starting team to deliver. Otherwise, when Redux is old enough, in I think maybe April time, then changes might potentially be made. So I think it's a wise idea for many teams to go down this route. We'll see if it works out for Loud as well, to motivate their roster to, deliver, and if they don't, then you've got a talented player there to potentially sub in as well. Enzo, verbal agreement with Mandatory, apparently in the VCL side, a name that you guys might be familiar with over the last couple of years or so. But this is a big development when it comes down to what's going on with Evil Geniuses. So, TSM confirm their roster. T-Dog, XXIF is back at it again, and then we get the other three guys. Seven is back, GMD is back, but notably Sim is back on this roster. TSM Valorant is back for the upcoming season. So, yeah, that's your team, full of familiar names from the TSM perspective, and they're going to be trying to run it back again and deliver the results this year in challenges that they were not quite able to deliver previously. But notably really is Sim, because Sim was playing for Evil Geniuses not long ago at all. He was alongside Derek, he was alongside Superman, he was alongside Nature, and of course Ye as well. They played the Sen City Classic. They did okay, but individually Sim didn't have a great time. Notably, of course, though, during that situation, Potter came out and said that she wanted Sim on the roster, right? Like, she wanted the team to be that team of Ye, Derek, Superman, Nature, and Sim. She said that that was their intended team for the new season, but for various reasons, that wasn't going to be happening. The roster was temporary, and Potter was implying that there were some decisions from the higher-ups in the organization that were effectively making that one happen. So it is definitely a confusing element where why have Evil Geniuses made the decisions that they have? Was Sim really wanted in the team or wasn't he? And what decisions are they now going to make to potentially make a correction there? Because Sim is no longer an option. He's now on TSM. So what are you going to do if you're EG? Presumably you're keeping Ye around. Therefore you need a 5th player. And that's been the big rumor about Fluorescent. Because as we said the other day, it was Sean Gares who said Fluorescent to MXS or to any of the Tier 2 rosters is a big challenge because the roster lock has already been and gone. Whereas for Tier 1, it's potentially still possible. And of course, there's another argument. If Floor is to leave Game Changers and get promoted, basically, should Floor go straight into Tier 1? Or, is Tier 2 a more sensible stepping stone up to Tier 1 in the future? Of course, there's some debate on that as to whether players should really be stepping straight up. But I think there is a good argument to say that, other players that we'll mention in a second have stepped straight up and done well. So it's difficult to argue, really. However, Purist, who has a pretty good reputation when it comes to sources and stuff like this, makes the following comment. To provide some extra context, after the Sen City Invitational, EG decided, basically the Sen City Classic, I think, EG decided not to continue with Sim. Icy's name is one to watch to fill the vacant spot, according to sources familiar with the situation. So this is fascinating because it happens just a day after this tweet, where obviously Potter's here with Floor after the Game Changers World Championship domination. But Purist says that Sim is gone. Now, is this Potter decided not to continue with Sim? Because she said during the weekends that, no, I want to keep this roster, but it's going to be temporary for reasons that she couldn't get into. So, look, did EG make a mistake not keeping Sim? I don't really think so. This was the Sen City Classic that NRG won. Sen came second. EG eventually came third, beating out Cloud9. But the worst player of the tournament by far was Sim. He had a really awful time, especially on the agents that he ran. And it is always pretty tough to see a player who played, like 4 maps or like whatever, didn't play that many matches in this tournament, but played not very well to such an extent that his career might be cooked. You see what I'm saying, right? It's like played a couple of bad matches and the entirety of his career has now been compromised by this development. But at the end of the day, if you're Evil Geniuses, you go into a tournament, there's a bit of pressure on, you're playing some top teams in the Americas, lots of people are watching. If you can't deliver, then obviously the team is going to take note of that. So Sim did not have a good Sen City Classic. He's now been got rid of basically from the roster. Here's Ye, the rest of the EG team is around here as well. And, some players had a really good tournament, mostly guys on NRG. But interesting to hear that potential replacement is going to be Icy, or at least Icy is the name that's been thrown around. So Icy is an interesting player. He's, in my opinion, not like a spectacular player, and I don't think he's been especially good, but he has at least been solid, and clearly Potter has reason to believe that he's going to be a good asset. He joined G2 this season, let's not forget. They've now made the changes over there instead. They brought Jorgamo onto that team to round out their roster after going through Net and Icy, and now Jorgamo's coming into G2, and Icy's now gone. However, if we go back into the past, we'll find that he was on Evil Geniuses, kind of like their reserve, basically, for quite some time. So Potter clearly has some experience with Icy in that kind of dynamic, probably has some numbers, probably has some feeling as to how good Icy could potentially be, and if Icy might be the man to replace Sim, then you've got to think that Potter knows what she's doing on this one. But it is nonetheless interesting how, we've talked about Floor as an option, and there's lots of reasons why that might make a bit of sense, and now we're hearing about Icy as the most likely candidate instead. So I guess EG have some time to still experiment if they want to. I'm assuming that it's still going to be Nature, Superman, Derek, and Ye as a core 4, and they're looking for one, but they do have time if they wanted to, I guess, to trial potentially with Floor, to trial with Icy, and to see how things go, and at least experiment a little bit maybe could be a good idea. And of course there's been some questions. Should Floor go straight from Game Changers to Tier 1? Is that fair? Is that reasonable? Like, I know there's been some debate on it. My opinion is pretty similar to this, that like, if you're going to get promoted, and you can prove that you are justifying that, then who actually cares? Because you've got the likes of Caron, or certainly in recent times Primi, for example, who basically has just been promoted straight in. Now, it's interesting because Primi didn't really have that much hype around him until he debuted. As soon as he debuted, people had heard about Primi. Once he debuted, people were like, wow, this guy's legit. Whereas for Floor, there's lots of hype, obviously, because of back-to-back Game Changers World Champions. So, moving to Tier 1 is a bit of a different story, whereas some of these other players, when they were brought in, it's like, oh, this is interesting. This guy's getting brought straight to Tier 1, and turns out Primi has obviously proved his worth. Whereas with Floor, because initially higher profile, there's some debate on whether, you should run through Tier 2 to then get to Tier 1. But at the end of the day, if the team is confident that, that player is right for that position, then we are going to get that type of outcome, right? And of course, Primi came into Tier 1 and immediately was dropping clips like this. So, it is what it is. Maybe Floor's going to do something similar, right? But very much interested in your thoughts on all of this stuff in the comment section below, just because Floor might not even get that spot if what we have talked about today is to be believed. So very much interested in your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care. And I'll see you next time.